Hello, good afternoon and welcome. I'm Tamsin Rose and I have the great pleasure to be your moderator this afternoon. And we're talking about a cultural deal for Europe, how to make culture central to the EU's green and sustainable future. We're delighted that so many people wanted to join us today, and as a result of the pandemic, unfortunately, that is a virtual engagement, but more than 2,200 people signed up online to be part of this conversation, which is a sign of how important culture is to our society. And if we look back over the last 2 years, we can see that the pandemic has been a collective experience that has had a very different impact on individuals, on societies. And we know that the trauma will leave deep scars on our society. There's a need to express and acknowledge grief and trauma. There's a need to bring people back together and reconnect through very difficult and polarizing times. We also appreciate the huge mental health impact that is a result of the pandemic, and this will need to bring people together and a way of finding their way forward. And COVID has accelerated the speed of change, the digital shift, and the need for the green transition. And when you have profound change that we need in the ways that we live, that we work, that we travel, we consume, and we produce, how do people find meaning and purpose? How do they understand their place in the world and their relationship to each other and the planet? How do we find a new way of thinking? How do we navigate through these periods of uncertainty? Well, the answer clearly is culture. Culture is a way that unites us and brings us together. It allows us to make sense of the world around us and our place in it. And we're going to be discussing this afternoon the role of Europe in helping to make that happen. And of course, this is a cultural event, and I'm delighted to say that we're accompanied this afternoon by Mena, a visual illustrator who will be illustrating our conversations, and throughout this afternoon I'll be going to her and she will be showing us her images and her visual take on our conversations. We're going to, this afternoon, have 3 blocks of conversation. The first one is going to be looking at how culture contributes to recovery and sustainability in Europe. Our second block of conversation will look at culture and the cultural heritage in the European Green Deal. And our final block will look at culture and the conversation on the future of Europe. So 3 important anchor points for us. And we want you to be part of the conversation. We may not be physically together, but we are connected. And there are 2 ways that we'd like you to engage with us. We're going to be using Mentimeter for interactive engagement. So I'm going to be asking you questions and you'll be contributing your thoughts via a word cloud, and I'll be showing that on screen. And then also we encourage you very strongly to engage with us through the chat. And in each of the different blocks of conversation, we'll be having someone who reports on what they've seen in the chat, comments and questions and contributions that have been highlighted through that. So we want you to be part of the conversation, even if we're not in the same room. And we're going to start our session today by sharing a short video from someone who was a champion at European level of understanding how culture has been critical to both the history of Europe and finding a way forward. And so this is an in memoriam and a recognition of the role of David Sassoli, the former president of the European Parliament. So let's watch the video.
Buongiorno a tutti, ringrazio Europa Nostra, Culture Action Europe, la Fondazione Culturale Europea, e non solo per aver organizzato questa iniziativa, ma anche per aver continuato a sostenere il settore culturale europeo durante questi mesi difficili, contribuendo a tenere vivo il dibattito sul ruolo della cultura nel progetto europeo. La crisi del Covid-19 ha avuto un impatto senza precedenti sui nostri sistemi sanitari, sulle nostre economie, sulle nostre vite, ma anche sul mondo culturale. E il Parlamento ha riconosciuto fin dall'inizio gli effetti drammatici che la pandemia provocava nel settore culturale e creativo, su numerosi lavoratori, sui professionisti della cultura, su tanti uomini e donne, il cui presente e futuro sono diventate gravemente incerti a causa delle misure di contenimento. La dimensione culturale non è un aspetto secondario delle nostre società, anzi è determinante per la qualità della nostra vita, ed è per questo che il Parlamento europeo si è impegnato fin dall'inizio a sostenere quello che rappresenta un settore cruciale per la costruzione di un mondo nuovo. Il patrimonio culturale, l'arte figurativa, la musica, il cinema, lo spettacolo non sono aspetti secondari, ma sono elementi che contribuiscono ad arricchire la nostra cittadinanza europea, a darci personalità. Per questo lo scorso settembre il Parlamento europeo ha adottato una risoluzione che invita tutti gli Stati membri a riconoscere la necessità di un sostegno massiccio alla cultura, di dedicarvi una parte significativa delle misure per la ripresa economica. Ma non solo, durante i negoziati sul bilancio pluriannuale dell'Unione mi sono impegnato ad assicurare un budget ambizioso per il programma Europa Creativa, al fine di continuare a sostenere il settore per i prossimi 7 anni. L'accordo che abbiamo raggiunto nei giorni scorsi con il Consiglio europeo è una testimonianza del nostro impegno a dare voce alle esigenze dei cittadini, a rispettarli in tutti i suoi ambiti. Per il Parlamento europeo questo rappresenta un ottimo risultato, considerando l'aumento significativo di fondi rispetto alle proposte precedenti. Tutti noi sappiamo quanto il settore della cultura in questo momento stia pagando gli effetti del Covid. Abbiamo un piano di ripresa senza precedenti che deve sostenere la nostra economia. Spero che ognuno di noi sia consapevole di questo e che ogni Stato membro si impegni a garantire alla cultura e al patrimonio culturale, che non sono la stessa cosa, il posto fondamentale che meritano in ogni piano nazionale. Dobbiamo pensare alla cultura come perno per la ripresa, in particolare per la transizione verde, digitale, ma anche come cemento sociale di un mondo post-Covid che va ricostruito, in cui i legami interpersonali dovranno essere riallacciati, perché i luoghi della cultura sono soprattutto luoghi di incontro. La conferenza sul futuro dell'Europa, che è un'ambizione di questa legislatura, speriamo possa partire al più presto, sarà l'occasione per i cittadini europei di proclamare il loro viscerale attaccamento alla creazione culturale e al patrimonio culturale, che sono le fondamenta delle loro identità, delle loro convivenze, della loro speranza. Ci permetterà anche di esplorare le modalità con cui continuare a conciliare identità e universalità attraverso il progetto europeo e a ribadire il nostro motto, di cui siamo molto orgogliosi, perché noi siamo uniti nella diversità. E in un momento in cui la notte sembrava essersi impadronita della nostra vita privata, dei luoghi culturali, dei concerti, dei cinema, dei teatri, gli europei hanno preso i loro strumenti e hanno cantato anche sui loro balconi. L'arte ha un potere catartico che può accompagnare la società post-pandemica sulla strada della resilienza. E l'arte non è un accessorio, è un viatico. L'arte non è politica, è poetica, una forza creativa che ci anima, che ci permette di vivere insieme, di sopravvivere individualmente e collettivamente. Grazie a tutti per aver organizzato questo seminario, per mettere in luce un argomento così determinante per la nostra vita e per il nostro futuro. Buon lavoro, speriamo presto di poterci incontrare di persona.
Thank you very much for that very clear vision of how important culture is for the future of Europe. And just to give some context on where we are with the European Cultural Deal, this was brought to you by 3 organisations that was mentioned in that video, by Culture Action Europe, the European Cultural Foundation and Europa Nostra. And they launched this big campaign, and so far we have more than 1,000 supporters online, and it's still open for endorsements, and we're going to put the link in the chat, so please make sure that you join this momentum and movement to call for a strong place for culture in the resilience and recovery post-pandemic. Culture Action Europe has mapped out that there has been a large amount of money, more than 10 billion euros allocated for culture in the national plans in both EU money and national member states, but very few countries have actually met the 2% target that was identified in the European Culture Deal, that called for at least 2% in the national recovery and resilience plans. We know that across several different European programmes, there's financing available. So there's Creative Europe, Horizon Europe, the Citizenship, Equality, Rights and Values programme, and even a new platform, Culture EU, where the Commission aims to showcase all the different funding opportunities. But much more needs to be done. And so this event is brought to you in partnership with those 3 partner organisations and with the Rebuilding Culture with Europe campaign, which is initiated by GESAC, the European Grouping of Societies of Authors and Composers. So just to give us a sense of direction from the President of the European Commission, we have this introductory video. So let's see the message from Ursula von der Leyen.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's no doubt about it. The pandemic has been an especially harsh period for artists. Artists were hit first, the hardest, and also the longest. At the same time, they gave us so much during the dark weeks of lockdowns. I would not even want to imagine how somber these days would have been without movies and music, without books and poems, or for some without video games. And for this, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. We are all aware of the hardship the pandemic has caused for actors and musicians, for theaters and cinemas, for concert organizers, and for everyone else working in the creative sector. And I can assure you, Europe stands ready to help. We have demonstrated this on numerous occasions in the last year. We, for example, changed our state aid framework to support culture. We introduced the scheme known as SURE, whereby we provided loans to member states to help save jobs. And in our new budget, we have earmarked 2.2 billion euros for the Creative Europe program, a significant increase compared to the last budget. This all comes on top of our 800 billion euro recovery fund. I know that you are asking member states to devote at least 2% of their national recovery plans to the cultural and creative sector. And the good news is that today a majority of member states have indeed introduced measures linked to culture in their recovery and resilience plans. Investments from Next Generation EU, for example, will enable stage designers at Cinecittà, near Rome, to weave together time-tested traditional studio production with new digital technologies. Next Generation EU funds will help to modernize the State Opera House in Prague, turning it into a world-class venue and a model for sustainable culture. And Next Generation EU will enhance the Acropolis Museum in Athens, as well as the future Museum of Underwater Antiques in Piraeus. Because Europe cannot be Europe without a thriving cultural sector. The theme you have chosen for your meeting today is a case in point. Make culture central in the European Union's green and sustainable future. And indeed, not only industry and governments, but also artists and the creative sector are eager to get involved in the fight against climate change. Because the European Green Deal is more than an environmental or economic project. The European Green Deal must also be a new cultural project for Europe. This is why it is so important and valuable that so many artists support movements like our new European Bauhaus. Ladies and gentlemen, the European Commission stands shoulder to shoulder with you at this difficult time. Because culture is what brings us together. Culture is a vibrant resource in times of crisis. It has always been at the core of the European project, and it will be central to Europe's future. I very much thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Commission President. And I'm delighted now to introduce Maria Gabriel, the European Commissioner for Innovation, Research, Culture, Education and Youth. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It is a great pleasure for me to be here to discuss together with all of you the key role of culture in rebuilding Europe, the importance of a cultural deal for Europe. But let me start by thanking Europa Nostra and the European Heritage Alliance, Culture Action Europe, and the European Cultural Foundation for the organization of this high-level conference. Your work to make sure that culture stays at the heart of the European project is truly inspiring. I think that we all share the same. Culture is the soul of Europe. Across borders, spanning decades, culture has always been an essential part of our European way of life. In difficult times, culture is there to offer comfort, to inspire dreams, to share feelings. And the emotions that books, music, films, painting, and sculpture offer us are invaluable. Whether it's live music and dance, visiting exhibitions and libraries, or going to the movies, we simply cannot live without real contact with art and culture. So the cultural and creative sectors are among Europe's strongest assets. They have a role to play in Europe's recovery, and we, the Commission, as you just heard this by the President of the European Commission, we are committed to supporting them. Let me remind you that in the European Union, culture provides jobs to almost 8 million people. 80% of residents recognize cultural heritage as important for their community, region, country, and the Union as a whole. At the same time, we know the price creators and artists paid and are still paying during the pandemic. Revenues dropped between 75 to 80% for museums, while cinemas and music venues saw a 70 and 64% revenue drop. This situation left artists, creators, and cultural professionals unprotected and more fragile than ever before. And they deserve more than words. They deserve our action. First, I'm pleased to confirm that the cultural and creative sectors will benefit from the support under the Recovery and Resilience Facility. We have worked a lot to encourage member states to consider culture as a strategic investment. And as a result, you remember our common objective, we managed to achieve at European level more than 2% of this instrument dedicated to cultural and creative sectors, cultural heritage, and this in the National Resilience and Recovery Plans. So I would like to congratulate Culture Action Europe for their report, providing a good overview of the measures planned by the member states. Allow me to mention a few examples. Several countries, such as the Czech Republic, Greece, or Spain, plan to pass legislation to improve the status of the artists. Italy will strongly support the film industry with the Cinecittà project and improve energy efficiency in cinema, theaters, and museums. Spain will invest in the digitization of major cultural institutions such as El Prado or El Reina Sofia museums, in boosting culture across the territory and in strengthening the competitiveness of the cultural industries. Czech Republic will ensure the equitable development of the cultural and creative sectors in the entire territory and support innovation through a creative voucher scheme. Energy efficiency and renovation works will take place in countries like Belgium, France, Slovakia, and many others. Greece have been particularly active to use arts and culture as an integral part of medical support, and this is very inspiring. So I think that the next few months, we all should continue to follow very closely all these good initiatives. And of course, it's up to us to see how we can scale them at European level. Second, that was mentioned by our president too, our Creative Europe program has an unprecedented budget of 2.4 billion up to 27. This is an increase of 63% compared with previous program. And I would like here to bring to your attention two important elements. The first one is the increase of the support for individual artists and creative professionals to be able to cross border and reach new audiences. And the second one is the targeted support to sector-specific needs in music, literature, architecture, cultural heritage, design, fashion, and cultural tourism. Third, yes, for the first time, we have in Horizon Europe specially dedicated cluster on culture and creativity of above 2 billion euro. It can tap into the full potential of cultural heritage, arts and creative sectors. We have recently mobilized 264 million euro on innovative research on European cultural heritage, cultural and creative industries, and the call is open until 20th of April. Let me give an interesting example with the ROC project, received funding from the Horizon 2020. It brings together a network of 10 cities across Europe: Lyon, Turin, Cluj, Eindhoven, Athens, Vilnius, Liverpool, Lisbon, Skopje, Bologna. And the aim is to support the transformation of historic city centers into creative and sustainable districts. So we have to continue to fulfill with adequate content this new cluster in Horizon Europe. Fourth element, a new knowledge and innovation community of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology. This new knowledge and innovation community will support the innovation ecosystems in the cultural and creative sectors, facilitating access to finance, training, and upskilling. The call for proposals is open until 24th of March, so apply and help shape the future of the EIT KIC culture and creativity. But we also know that having access to these funds, it's not always easy and quick. That is why I strongly encourage you to use Culture EU. It is the first time that the Commission has developed a user-centered, one-stop shop on European funding opportunities for culture and cultural heritage. In just 3 clicks, you can find out 75 funding opportunities and which one is best suited for your needs. So the willingness at national and European level to invest in culture and heritage confirms the need for them to be part of the greening and sustainability of our societies. And we should not be afraid to look to more sustainable future when it comes to cultural heritage. That is why we set up a working group with national experts to reflect on strengthening cultural heritage resilience for climate change. The final report with its recommendations will be published later this year. And I'm pleased that the progress of the group's work was highlighted at COP26 in November 21. It shows that culture becomes an intrinsic part of the solution to the challenges posed by climate change and digitization. And last but not least, the drafting of the new Council work plan for culture will be the right time to underline important priorities in the agenda of European cooperation in the field of culture. It will be important to establish the right working methods to tackle our European priorities and reinforce culture's contribution to Europe's recovery and its sustainable future. At the European Commission, we recognize a true mission for culture in finding tomorrow's answers to today's challenges. And here comes the new European Bauhaus. It is an opportunity for the culture and cultural heritage sectors to join forces with research and innovation, with citizens, practitioners, becoming an integral part of the required transformation. We launched in January this year's edition of the new European Bauhaus Prizes. We have numerous examples to show that by joining forces across the arts, education, innovation, we can build sustainable and inclusive environments for us all. Applications are open until 28th of February. Please spread the word. We want to support cultural and creative actors in transforming our lives. So, dear friends, I would like now to conclude by having a thought for the Notre Dame Cathedral. 2.5 years ago, the world saw it burning in horror. The securing of the site and its reconstruction is underway with a very ambitious timetable. It is this ambition that I'm carrying at European level. During its recovery, the cultural sector will sometimes face transformations, but I'm confident that it will emerge stronger and more resilient. And it will make us all the more proud to be European. So thank you very much and have a very fruitful discussions today.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, and thank you again for highlighting for us both the open funding calls that people can apply for, the connection to the National Recovery and Resilience packages, which I know the members of our community will be watching very carefully to see how culture is given an appropriate space. And finally, you mentioned the action plan for culture, which is being developed, and that's very much going to be the focus of our next block of conversations, where we're going to look at how culture is addressed over the next few years. So thank you very much to the Commissioner.